welcome back to the XR Strategy Podcast. My name is Thom Strimbu, and today we've got something very exciting we're talking about. We're talking about XR in the pharmaceutical industry. But first, we've got a very exciting announcement, is that we've got a new member of the Voxel Revolution team, and we are joined with him here today, Rudra Trivadi. Rudra, I'm glad to have you on board. You're joining us as the Regional Director of Operations for India. Welcome to the team.
Hi, Tom. It's an exciting thing for me as well. Thank you very much.
Your focus is specifically on immersive technology solutions to create value in the pharmaceutical manufacturing sector. Now, that's a very defined target that you're uniquely qualified for. Why don't you share a bit about your background?
Well, yes, academically speaking, I hold a master's in pharmacy where I specialized in pharmaceuticals and this area called pharmaceutics, which is the science of making medicines. And I also hold an MBA from NMIMS University, where I specialized in pharmaceutical technology management. And in the past, I've worked in areas right from cancer therapy for colorectal cancer to helping pharmaceutical companies deploy AR and VR in the manufacturing setup. For the past year, I ran a startup in the area of esports, and we were based out of Hong Kong. And so I would say that I have always been at the intersection of tech and pharma. And now that big pharma is finally embracing digital, I'm very excited to join VRC.
Well, I have to say we're excited to have you. So with that, let's get kicked off. The question I have to get us rolling is, our listeners might be curious to know where the opportunities are to implement immersive technology within their operations, specifically within pharmaceutical manufacturing.
Well, in pharmaceuticals, one big area that XR is being adopted in is training employees in manufacturing units. So in the past, things were very simple, but now that we've got bigger machines, which are very, very complicated, hitting the market, as a result of this, training employees to use these complicated new machines is also becoming very difficult. And what VR has done is that it's enabled pharmaceutical companies to train their employees in a simple yet very immersive and engaging way, as a result of which employees start loving their training sessions. So I recently worked with a pharmaceutical company where they were building the entire manufacturing unit from scratch, and all the machines were coming in from Italy, and no one in the entire organization knew anything about these equipment. As a matter of fact, no one in the whole of India knew anything about these equipment because they were going to be brought in for the first time.
Right.
So yes, that was a big challenge for us. And as a result of this training, the first set of people being trained were being trained from trainers from Italy, but then training the rest of the employees was going to be a challenge further down. And that's where VR helped a lot. VR actually enabled us to create a virtual environment in which employees could use this equipment beforehand. And as a result of this, in many cases, we saw that there's a reduction in on-the-job time training. So there have been reports stating that you can reduce on-the-job time training by almost up to 50%. And this just adds to the productivity of the employees. When we talk more about training, another area where XR can be applied is when you want to do qualification of your employees, if they've gone through a particular training or not. And this is something that's very, very important from the regulators' perspective, which are the government agencies. Pharmaceuticals is, I would say, the most highly regulated industry in the world.
Sure. Yeah.
And, if you don't follow the rules by the book, you end up being in a lot of trouble, often paying fines in the tunes of millions of dollars. So all companies want to be safe, and they want to be compliant with the rules and regulations that have been set by the government. And now governments want to know if you're training your employees well. They don't only want to know if you've trained your employees, but we've noticed that they also want to know what have you trained them on, what is the content on which they've been trained and how they're being trained. So traditional methods of just reading the entire training manual and then just signing something that said that I've read and understood it no longer apply to the pharmaceutical industry. Because we've seen employees who just scroll through the entire manual and say that, oh, I've read it.
Yeah, of course, we've all been there, right? Where you've got the 1,200 page Facebook new terms of service, and you need to either click agree or disagree. And of course, yeah, I agree. And so in that way, it's really this binary choice. And I think what you result in there is that it's not helpful information for management to understand how they're doing with training and does it meet the standards that they have for their business.
I completely agree with you. These analytics that are being provided by XR nowadays, because of this, the same manual that you were using, the same module that you were using for training your employees can be used in newer applications. For example, if you want to use it to screen new candidates for a position in your company, you can simply have them run through the entire simulation and see if they perform it well in the virtual world, and if they're good for your company. So that's where that's another application that's opening up as a result of these analytics. And there's this last thing about training using a virtual environment, is that it's way more fun and engaging for employees compared to your traditional means of a classroom setting where people just want to doze off at the end.
So it's something along the lines of what is very popular here lately about gamification.
Yes, I would say gamification is something that's catching up in pharmaceuticals now, and trainers want to start deploying something like gamification. As a matter of fact, they're actually doing it in the physical world, but the virtual world is a bit challenging for them to understand the real potential of it. And once we've got some real good use cases, I see wide-scale adoption of gamification using XR taking place across industries, I would say.
So I want to move on to kind of maybe a second example of where you see that immersive technology is making an impact in pharmaceutical manufacturing.
Yeah, so I would say the second area is in the quality labs. So quality labs are, in my opinion, they are supposed to be the brain, heart, and soul of the pharmaceutical manufacturing unit. They are the most integral part of the entire pharmaceutical supply chain because they are responsible for ensuring that good quality and safe medicines reach out to the patients. So as a result of this, there's already a lot of pressure that's in a pharmaceutical quality lab. They have to follow a fixed protocol, they have to follow a fixed process, and they have to use sophisticated equipments like HPLCs and LCMSs, etc., which give them the accurate and precise results. As a result of this, what we've seen is that when the quality lab starts to adopt technologies like XR, their work becomes very, very easy. So we've seen companies like Roche Pharma, they've started adopting head-mounted displays or HMDs, and they've integrated this with their already existing software so that now you don't need to refer to a computer screen or a physical document to say what your next step in the process is going to be, because you can simply see it in your head-mounted display or in your goggles like a HoloLens or Vacuity. So as a result of this, we've seen that not only is the entire thing taking less amount of time, the whole process taking less amount of time, it's also becoming way more precise. There are lesser errors, and if there are any errors that are made, it's easy to detect them down the line because the entire process is being recorded. So because of this, carrying out activities like root cause analysis and implementing some good corrective and preventive action is becoming easier. And this in turn has ultimately saved pharmaceutical companies, or I would say has the potential to save pharmaceutical companies hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of dollars, because a batch failure is simply something that pharmaceutical companies cannot afford at all.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, I think when we're talking about XR in the lab, we're specifically talking about augmented reality, right? I mean, um, since virtual reality might be good for training, but AR is best in the lab environment. And most listeners, I think, would have either tried augmented reality or at least have a really good sense of how it works, right? So data is presented interactively into the user's line of sight. And in the lab, that might be an SOP, or in the case where IoT connected devices exist, they might even have access to something like the elapsed time or the temperature on top of a piece of equipment. Now, not having to leave your station for mission critical information, I think that saves time. And then also the ease of access prevents incidents. Not to mention that it's all, hands free.
I would say so, yes. One big thing is that in a pharmaceutical quality lab, um, the more hands, the merrier, I would say. So people would actually wish for having a third hand to help them out. But the fact that you have one hand that's completely free and it's not depending on your tablet or on your computer to refer to the exact procedure is actually a game changer, I would say. It's helping a lot of technicians, it's helping a lot of operators to become more productive as the days pass by.
There's one other technology that I wanted to mention, and it's directly relevant to the lab, but it can also have an impact across the entire plant. And that's remote expert, as sometimes called remote collaboration. And if you've never heard of it, I'd start by referring you to a company called Utility AR, or if you're in the United States, maybe look at WorkLink by Scope AR. But basically, the concept is that there's AR glasses that have an outward-looking video camera. Mm-hmm. And if you encounter a problem that you need assistance with, we'll use a really generic example. If a device in the lab is not functioning properly, you would typically be on the phone with either maybe the IT department or perhaps the vendor. And they could be in the next building or they could be halfway around the world. And with Remote Expert, you basically initiate a video call from your glasses that the vendor can view through a secure platform. And rather than hopping on a plane, he's able to guide the operator through the diagnostic process. And unlike a traditional video call, he can draw annotations on his screen that show up right in the line of sight of the operator. Now, imagine that old situation where you're trying to distinguish between like the blue wire with the white stripe or the white wire with the blue stripe. Now the vendor can just draw an arrow that pops up in your glasses and says, this wire.
So the remote expert is something that's very, very exciting, especially for the pharmaceutical industry, because not only is that the thing about keeping your lab sterile and clean and with as less people as possible, but also there's this other aspect where nowadays there's a particular process that needs to be followed, and it is being transferred from a lab, let's say somewhere in Switzerland, to a lab in the USA. And to do this, traditionally a person with the entire process flies from the US, from Switzerland to the US, and teaches everyone. But now with the remote expert tool coming in, there's the person is still in Switzerland, the lab is still in the US, and there's a lot of the entire process of transferring the method takes place remotely. So that's another area, where remote expert has been able to save a lot of cost for pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rudra, I've appreciated the talk. You started off with a bang, and if I wasn't convinced before, I'm definitely am now that you're the right guy for the job. So let's wrap this up today. I wonder if you could maybe leave us with some takeaways.
So the first area would be that educate yourself. Know what the tech is all about. Know what XR is about. Have a hands-on experience with the technology and get your leadership on board. Ensure that you're actually making it clear to your leadership, to your site leadership team, that this is a game-changing technology, which if adopted can create some real-time impact. Get some cases of where this technology has been adopted. And I feel that's where our role comes in. I would say that our 4-step process, with the first step being our XR experience, really helps pharmaceutical companies start their entire journey in adopting XR.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's where we'll have to leave it. Thank you very much for listening today. I hope we've opened up the topic of immersive technology in pharmaceutical manufacturing. Of course, if you'd like to know more, you can always go to voxelrevolution.com. That's VOXEL revolution.com. I'm Thom Strimbu. We'll catch you next time.